My name is Irfan Mirza. I'm the chair of education at the Bosnian American Institute. I'm also the author of a book called The History of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This history book covers Bosnian history going all the way back to the Ice Age, when the very first settlers of Europe took refuge and traveled south along the Dinaric Alps into the temperate valleys of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the book continues from that period of prehistory all the way through to the modern era. So it's a comprehensive study of the history of a people, a nation, a region, and all of the influences that came to that country and that region and those people. Now, the book itself is perhaps maybe the best way of describing it evolutionary. I wouldn't say revolutionary. It's evolutionary in that it actually changes the perspective of history for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Up to now, majority of the books that have been written on Bosnia's history have been centered on some other culture, some other civilization. The Romans wrote about Bosnia and Herzegovina, but they wrote about it as a land that they occupied. The Byzantine wrote about it, but they wrote about it as a land that they divided and gave to people. The communists from Yugoslavia wrote about it, but they wrote about it from the perspective of Beograd. The Croatians wrote about it, but from the perspective of Zagreb, their national capital. So almost everybody who's written this history has written it to some other interest. And Bosnia and Herzegovina has very rarely ever been at the center of its own comprehensive history. So what I did with the history book is I put Bosnia in its center. I sat in the center of Bosnia and Herzegovina and I looked at the world around and how it was evolving and changing. And that became a new perspective, perhaps a refreshing perspective of the history of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But today, we're here to talk about Eid. So I want to say to all of you, Eid Mubarak. Roughly translated, maybe I could say Happy Eid or congratulations on this day of Eid. There are two Eid holidays in the Islamic faith. One is Eid al-Fitr, which is the one that we're celebrating, that commemorates the end of the month of fasting during the month of Ramadan from sunrise to sunset each day. The other is Eid al-Adha, which comes about almost 2 months after this particular holiday. And that one commemorates the end of the pilgrimage, the holy pilgrimage to the city of Mecca that all Muslims are obligated to do at least once in their life. This holiday, Eid al-Fitr, is actually a reflection of the Islamic values of empathy, charity, kindness, generosity, peace, and goodwill. But it is nonetheless a celebration. It's a celebration where people get together, festivities, children play, gifts are exchanged, food, and a lot of enjoyment. Because it is truly a celebration of piety, a month of obedience, a month of fighting your own inner desires to eat and drink, and fasting during that time, praying extraordinarily, reaching closeness to God. So this day becomes the day that we sort of release and express a sigh of relief to say, oh, we have achieved this monumental moment of the self-realization of our own piety. So it's a phenomenal holiday. This holiday goes back to about the year 622 to 624, when the Prophet Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina. And in Medina, he instantiated these holidays as festivals so that the Muslims who were there could enjoy their time with each other, to come together as a community, which is a very important aspect of this holiday. Getting together, getting to know one another, getting to know people that you haven't met before or that you haven't spent time with. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, well, this holiday came when the Arabs, the Aghlabids tribes, as they were known, traveled up and down the Adriatic Sea. The Aghlabids were seafaring Arabs, and they laid a siege on the town of Dubrovnik in modern-day Croatia in about the 8th or 9th century. Right? So this tradition perhaps was introduced in Bosnia as early as that. We know that the Arabic sailors and tradesmen had reached Bosnia and Herzegovina, where they brought ideas of monotheism, which is the basis of Islam, the belief in a single God and no other deities except for that God, the concept known as monophysitism, meaning that no other humans, no other beings have any divine characteristics other than God. So these ideas came to Bosnia and Herzegovina very early, and they were embraced by the scholars who wanted to understand them. Now, at that time in Bosnia, Christianity was a nascent religion. It had just started. Christians were scattered. Christianity itself was banned by the Byzantine, by the Romans during the Roman time of the Roman Empire, and it was quite challenging. So Christians had to go into hiding, and one of the places that they could conveniently hide was in the hills of Bosnia and Herzegovina, this mountainous, relatively isolated territory surrounded by fast-flowing rivers that were not that easy to navigate across. Islam perhaps was not the religion of the state at that time, but it certainly was something that was known by Bosnian scholars. And over time, the scholars became more and more curious. And by the time of the 15th century, when the Ottomans came, Bosnians had already embraced their own form of monotheism, a form of Christianity known as Bogumilism. Bogumil was a Christian priest, a Bulgarian, perhaps Macedonian priest, who had brought a very strict form, an ascetic form of Christianity to his people. And as the forces of the Romans and certainly the churches themselves were forming, Bogumil himself had to escape the wrath of the church, for he was about to be declared a heretic. And so he took refuge in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And when the Ottomans came, this sort of heretic church that he had founded found protection by the state, by the Ottomans. And naturally, a lot of the Bogumils converted to Islam. So Bosnia saw in the 15th century mass conversion to Islam. The Ottomans had a policy of favoring Muslims. They had a policy of giving Muslims administrative privileges and not taxing them as heavily as the others were taxed, as non-Muslims were taxed. So Bosnia saw this mass influx, or this conversion, mass conversion from Bogumilism, from various forms of atheism, from agnosticism, from dualism into Islam. And the hierarchy of the Islamic religious structure was protected by the Ottomans. So Bayram, as the Bosnians called the Eid holiday, came to Bosnia in a very strong and rich way in about the 15th century. And it is a tradition that has been celebrated in Bosnia ever since. So on this very important day, I congratulate you all for celebrating this day. I wish you all happy Eid or Eid Mubarak. And I want to thank Salesforce.com and all of the people in Salt Lake City who have attended this wonderful festival and this event that you're having. I wish I could be there in person. I can't. I hope this video serves at least some purpose in bringing some awareness about Bosnia and about its unique characteristics, sitting in the heart of Europe, a diamond in the rough, a country where all of the religions of the world were welcomed, all of the ethnicities were treated with dignity and respect, and more importantly, all were granted the protection of the state. This is something that the rest of Europe has yet to achieve. This is something that the rest of Europe has aspired for many centuries, but has not been able to. Bosnia and Herzegovina has embodied exactly that. So I'm honored and proud, I want to say, to be able to share this information with you about Bosnia and Herzegovina on this incredibly important day, this holiday of Eid. Pošetala su ljagina fata,
Aj pošetala do Mostara grada, luta fata počavši sama, ona traži muju Pazarđana, nađe muju u 7. dućanu, ej bolan muju, daj mi